All right, then let's get started. It is 4/20, 2023. And as predicted, Elon Musk did delay his latest launch to time it with 4/20. And it's not that he's a pothead, because he's really not. I mean, he publicly smoked a mix cigarette blunt, and he barely inhaled. He Clintoned the thing. And that was with Joe Rogan. And that's back when they were trying to create the perception that Joe Rogan's like the cool guy, the jock, and then here's the nerd. And they're acting like teenagers. It didn't make sense. Like they're in their mom's basement. It's like you're grown men, just hit the blunt. But the 4/20 has everything to do with more or less Satan worship, Saturn, Kronos, the Demiurge, whoever these elites worship with their obelisks. But he sent his BLIMP, the simulated rocket, up into the sky where it blew up predictably. It had 33 engines. Only 30 of the engines turned on. So that inspires confidence for those of you who think he's going to take you to Mars to save you from global warming and Republicans. But the whole thing takes off it doesn't blast off like a rocket. No, it lifts off. It had a lift off. It slowly ascends. And I live in the place where they have the International Balloon Fiesta every year. And a liftoff is different than a blast off. You're looking at helium. And yeah, it has the engines on the bottom, but it's basically a jet propelled airship, a rigid blimp. All right, we're joined by Zin Bellis, Cat Bunny Buffalo from D Live. Battery 79 says space is fake AF, X322X, and Yurt Mama says happy birthday, Hitler. Well, Yurt Mama says Hitler's birthday. It wasn't happy birthday. I should probably not add that in there. Now, again, Joe Rogan. I'm looking at the news here. Joe Rogan is also in the news because he finally confronted Thug Nasty about flat Earth. And when I look at UFC, it's just as controlled by the same forces that control all the other sports entertainment and news entertainment. Just so you know. I mean, just so happens that on Easter Sunday, a 33-year-old named Israel traced a cross in the middle of the ring after he re-won the UFC championship belt. He puts a cross over the monster label in the middle with the 3 nails, the 666. I mean, it's all unholy. But yeah, Thug Nasty has been calling out Joe Rogan for some time. And I'm not a fighter, and I'm not going to say I could take him on, but I just don't think that some of these UFC fighters look all that intimidating. Like, I don't know, is it scripted? Like, could they take on WWF people in real life? I don't know. But Thug Nasty, who's the least intimidating fighter I've ever seen, literally wrapping himself in the American flag. And he goes to Tucker Carlson, where he says he's ready to die for MAGA. Like, he's full-blown Q. He really is. He drank the Kool-Aid. It's running in his veins. But anyway, Thug Nasty called out Joe Rogan on the whole flat Earth topic, and Joe Rogan finally addressed it. And he's been avoiding this for some time. But I want to address his response first, but also, I want to bring this thing up about Joe Rogan himself. Like, why is he considered to be some kind of gatekeeper? Like, Joe Rogan is the gatekeeper. He's the big boss, the main boss at the end of the level. If we can just get him to concede, it will be recognized as a fact. Like, I'm sorry, but Joe Rogan is not the gatekeeper. He's not stopping the flat Earth topic at all. It has nothing to do with his approval. I don't know why there's this need to seek his approval of all people. He's just a liberal with a big podcast pandering to the target audience, but I mean, liberal conservative. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. Not in 2023. Okay, well, but anyway, Joe Rogan did address it, and here's what he had to say. He said, quote, "People believe the flat Earth theory because it's fun. It's fun to think you know things other people don't know." We're joined by Diana South says, "I believe Rogan is a CIA plant." Rocco says, "Joe the Toe Rogan is the cool kid on the internet of sandboxes." Another commenter says, "Plague of locusts, the hive mind zombie swarm." Thank you for joining, Shannon Jones. They're on YouTube. Yeah, my other YouTube channel, the Infinite Plane Radio one, got a strike. It's just words. No graphics. It's just a little image on the screen of a cassette tape spinning from the app that I'm using to record. And just based on my words, they take out my videos within hours of them being uploaded. Now the channel that you're on is called, I believe it's Helmet Karen, because I predicted the advent of the helmet Karen. You know, the mask Karens, the ones who say, wear your mask. I mean, there were so many of them. And during 2020, I was a pedestrian the entire time, and I was constantly dealing with unmasked mask Karens in their cars yelling at me to mask myself, even though I'm outside. But I'm waiting for the helmet Karens to arrive in time for space junk. Battery 79 says Rogan and AJ Mossad agents. Fascinating. Yeah, I think they're higher. Look, I think there's a pyramid. And on the pyramid at the very top, just above the capstone, there's a point where just above the intelligence agencies, you have the cult that runs the place, the real eyes wide. Guys are at that level. They're higher than CIA or FBI or being media plants or actors, like most of the politicians, actors just put into these positions, wannabe actors. People like Candace Owen. Candace Owens was an actress who somehow became a conservative overnight. And, you know, this is kind of fascinating when we get into some of these characters. Like Ollie Alexander, and we'll get into him in a moment. Ollie Alexander was a felon. He was on parole for burglary. He was a really skeezy fella. And apparently he fell in love with Karl Rove after putting an ad online for politicians who wanted to sleep with him and talk politics. So he slept his way to the top of the conservative power structure within politics. And it turns out that's how you get in. You know, Ollie Alexander is the Ghislaine Maxwell of American nationalism, as strange as that sounds. But how strange can it get? I mean, it can't get any stranger than a black being the face of white nationalism. But the recruiter who brings in the compromised individuals, the groomer, Ollie Alexander, is some kind of royalty on the right. Even Alex Jones kisses this dude's rump. Won't even take him off the website. Millie Weaver's like, I got kicked off of InfoWars for my Shadowgate documentary, which was garbage. Yet Ollie Alexander still has a position on banned video. I'm like, why don't they delete Ollie Alexander after he honked on Owen Schroyer? Like, that should have gotten him punched in the face and fired. It would have done everybody a lot of good because these individuals are poison. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not like he's a rotten apple. What I realized with this black male circle exposed in the conservative Christian right, what I've realized is that, no, it's actually a basket of rotten apples. And if you're a good apple, it'll rot you. That's how you get in. It's not a couple of bad apples. It's completely the opposite. Sledge says, I'm from the UK, so I find the stuff you cover so interesting as I need to view it on media. No idea how I have not seen this media deconstruction before. Yeah, they've kept it out of sight, out of mind. And if you're not a graduate from the Auto Hoaxology 101 course on off-world stage reporting, MSM, MSM plus, MSM minus, I highly recommend it because we have a framework we're using to examine the media that just doesn't play into the ignorance that you're forced to adhere to. You know, we're not taking anything at face value. We are legitimately critically thinking here, and we're the only objectivists left on earth. Whatever shape you think it is, whatever you think this place is, it's around the pure subjectivity, except for those who are orchestrating the belief systems versus belief systems, this perpetual war. But we are truly objectivists. True objectivism, Ayn Rand, etc., died in the late 60s with the space program. They entered into the false world stage, which is, you know, we all see the same world, but it's about interpretation. But let me continue here. Joe Rogan said, people buy into flat earth, quote, because it's fun. It's fun to think, you know, things people don't know. Then he added, it's fun to think that everybody else is a sheep and that you understand the firmament and that there's this glass cover and the stars are just lights in the sky and the earth is the center of everything and God is control of the whole ride. Again, this is Joe Rogan's take on flat earth. He added, the mystery of the universe is a vast one. He said, that he finds it hard to believe, given the magnitude of the universe, that there are flat earthers that think we're in a quote fishbowl. To which Thug Nasty said that these opinions by Joe Rogan will drive people away from the Holy Spirit. So Joe Rogan made Thug Nasty mad because Thug Nasty believes that this is the ultimate truth, and Joe Rogan said it's kind of small to think we're in a fishbowl given how big the universe is. Now, of course, that's a mischaracterization, but what do you expect? I mean, you can argue all day with people who say, well, show me your flat earth model. Well, show me your globe model, because the one that you show me is likely the Mercator projection, which is admittedly not accurate, or it's going to be based off of CGI. And I don't believe we're in a CGI ball. I don't think the universe is pixels. Maybe, is this Minecraft? Maybe we're all sentient Minecraft characters. And that would explain the pixelation of the NASA footage that I always see when they're in quote space on the ISS. Penguin Doctor says, happy 420. Diana South says, we're taking advantage of our free use of question marks. Look, I've said it like 3 years ago. They're going to send NATO troops in. They're going to kick down your door. They're going to probably beat you up. And they're going to take the question marks off all of your keyboards and maybe even the cues. I've been saying this for some time. Well, just today, TikTok said they're going to delete any content that questions climate change. You could have a video that's just the word climate change and a question mark, and they'll delete it. And they're going to report you to China, get you on the execution list, probably, just like the NBC climate change confessional page where people confess their climate sins. You don't think that's going over to China? Now, if you're asking for a wrench and you're in the Discord server, I will hand them out after. Now, Joe Rogan has been steadfastly avoiding the flat earth topic ever since he became like this sort of de facto gatekeeper by the whole truth community. And I think he has this reputation because at one point he knew the moon landing was fake, but then suddenly he turned around and people assumed he must have been told that he went too far. And the moon landing is kind of sacrosanct. It's a huge part of the big psychological operation that we believe in outer space, that we've been up there. Can't take away the moon landing. That's the real reason why they hate the flat earth topic, because it rules out that as a possibility. And to me, it's as simple as Occam's razor. You know, what's more likely? We flew to the moon in that homeless tweaker shelter on that Saturn V, and that they landed up there. And, you know, the whole thing is very shoddy workmanship. But what's more likely? That they faked it in a movie or they actually went. And I would say that they the burden of proof because they never showed us the moon. And and you could back this up. Just look at any image of the moon and tell me where the moonscapes are. And I'm not talking about from space. I'm not talking about from a telescope. I'm saying from the astronaut's eye level, show me a moonscape. You know, if you've ever parked at the side of the road in the middle of the night, like some area, we just look out and it's like, okay, your horizon is way the hell out there. The moon landing, you see the horizon line is about 100 yards away. Well, the moon is a quarter the size that the Earth is purported to be. It would be flat from the perspective of a human. It would be flat for miles. It wouldn't just disappear over the next hill. They're not on a blimp, they're on the moon. But they never actually showed you a moon with fields full of craters. There's no moonscape, just not there. Sledge says, why have some astronauts said they see stars and some don't? Yeah, it depends on what they're on. I mean, Don Petit, he says that he sees colors that don't even exist on Earth. You know, these individuals are not briefed in advance. And what you'll never see, look, the trick is given away by what they don't show you. What they show you is a carefully cultivated and scripted illusion. Think of it as stage magic. The magician can only trick you if you're in the audience and you're looking at what he's presenting. If you're backstage, if you're on the side, if you're up above, you're going to be able to see things that everyone else won't, and you won't fall for it. And that's pretty much what the ISS is. It's a magic trick. You're never going to see an astronaut with an iPhone doing a selfie of themselves. They won't throw the iPhone around so you can see the footage of a phone floating in space. They'll never spin around. There are certain things they can't do because of harnesses. Oswaldo says, YouTube big mad at you again. Oh yeah, they are mad at me because on May the 2nd, we have a hearing. And I have accused them with evidence. I've actually demonstrated that they're culpable in a conspiracy to kick me off YouTube. And well, we're going to see, but that has made them mad because we have to have a hearing. And I don't even think they wanted to go this far. Hopefully it goes to trial. They're trying to get it dismissed because of venue, the jurisdiction. They, on the fine print, you agree to only sue them in their neighborhood. But I'm aiming for an exception here because I'm not suing them as a YouTuber with a grievance. I'm suing them as a private citizen who's the target of a White House connected hacker who's been contracted by the government to F with our channel and what we're doing with our think tank. And he has used their platform to commit these crimes by lying to their legal department, claiming to be me. So we have trademark, we have stalking, we have harassment, and we have fourth-degree felony identity theft wrapped up in this package. And YouTube is in the middle of it, whether they like it or not. And that's probably what it is. I upload anything and they just delete it. They don't even need an excuse. And that's fine. Like I said, it probably helps me because I've been making the point in my case here that I'm not a user. They won't allow me to be. Okay, let us continue. Tim and Vixtagram noticed this. On the front of the mahogany masterpiece there at the Dadeville Bank where the Sweet 16 shooting happened, it had this strange emblem on the front, which is a pentagon and a couple of lines through it. I didn't know what to make of it, but now that I'm looking at it, I agree with them. It's a pentagon and the Twin Towers. And this is one of these events that's incredibly coded. If you didn't follow it, it's a shooting in Alabama that took place at a Sweet 16 party, and it had all kinds of 16s conspicuously attached to it. Not only that, but there was a mystery as to who did it. And throughout the presentation of this PSYOP, you had the usual, the 33s, the water bottles, the bad acting. But the name of the town, Dadeville, the way they kept representing it, I'm sure it was just coincidental and accidental. It kept on saying evil and devil. Like, oh, we don't know who did it. What's going on in America? And in the background, it's like devil. Well, obviously, this is part of their demonization of gun ownership. And then on top of this, we've been talking about the wrong door PSYOP. Well, all of a sudden, somebody rings the wrong doorbell, gets shot. That one was racist. Then you have someone else parks in the wrong driveway, gets shot. These cheerleaders go in the wrong car because they carpool, they got in the wrong car, and they got shot. And then you had a little 6-year-old girl, had a basketball, which I find hard to believe, but it rolled into the neighbor's yard and he shot her dad. And then she had shrapnel on her cheek, which is also very fake. She's already on the news within hours of being shot. And it's just to play into people's fears about guns. And then it's throwing in the racial element. Oh, this is a racist old white man shooting a black teen. Or here's a racist black shooting a white toddler or a little girl. It's just the news media as normal, but they were like, what's with America? You park in the wrong driveway, you ring the wrong doorbell, you're going to get shot. And before these 3 or 4 events were publicized, there was one here locally where the police went to the wrong house and the guy answered with a gun in hand and they shot him because that's their policy. And I thought, there's no way that's fake. That's reasonable. That could happen. But then I thought, well, because there's no agenda. And whenever I look at a PSYOP, I'm like, is it fakeable? But moreover, is there an agenda attached to it? What's the agenda behind some guy opening his door and getting blasted? Oh, now I see. The agenda is we are trigger happy. We need to get rid of our guns. Sledge says, every time I kick, your penguins will follow. Yeah, you know what? I could send out a text blast and infers here to about 200. I just haven't been because I know the audio is not the best. I know it's somewhat choppy, but we're going to fix that very soon. I'm working on getting into an office space. But YouTube is not the be-all, end-all of anything. If anything, it's It's dead. I mean, it's sacrificed its best aspects a long time ago. It's not all that relevant anyway. I just like it because of the chat. But as you can see, there are just as many people listening on the audio stream, D Live, and many other platforms. YouTube wouldn't even be an area of contention if I wasn't trying to maintain my presence despite my enemies on this platform. It's kind of remarkable how I'm looking at this and I'm like, I have stalkers. We have channel enemies who have spent 4.5 to 5 years trying to shut us up. Like that says something. And this is provable. Our hacker is a White House connected, very popular individual behind the scenes. He's actually friends with Joe Rogan and Alex Jones. In fact, he knows Ollie Alexander. Now let's get into that. Let's get into this a little bit here because we've been talking about this groomer gate on the right and what we've learned about how they operate. Not a surprise, really. And I did bring up that Akbar really made his way into politics. Here's a little background on Akbar. But the thing is, Ali Akbar, had some kind of meetings with Elon Musk. He's a huge part of Elon Musk's recalibrating Twitter to account for and allow a lot of QAnon and alt-right types back on, including Nick Fuentes, including George News. Ollie was part of this, and he bragged about it. But here's a little bit of a background on him. So he's a criminal background. He wasn't even released from probation until May 2012. And he left the Texas jail in 2007, and then he became the top rung of the young Republican hierarchy by founding the National Bloggers Club. He made friends with Andrew Breitbart from Breitbart.com. Then that was taken over later by Milo Yiannopoulos. But you can see at the very beginning, there's a picture emerging here. Goes on to say he had his, basically he slept his way to the top. We'll just leave it at that. But that this is standard operating procedure for the right, for the conservatives. And are we to think that the Democrats are pure? They don't have a blackmail ring? I'm pretty sure it's on both sides. Now, Ollie Alexander was an advisor for Ye's presidential campaign. He was the organizer of the Stop the Steal event, and he's a cherished part of InfoWars, even though he groped Owen Schroyer. And it's like, well, what does he have? What does he have on Alex Jones that Alex Jones can't denounce him and kick him off? I mean, here they are spending years talking about Democrats eating babies and trafficking children and grooming, and yet they have one in their midst, and they just turn a blind eye to it. Very, very unusual. All right, but let's go ahead and read some of these comments. A lot of people are being called to task about this. Millie Weaver, who used to be on InfoWars, said, "Isn't it interesting how Alex Jones fired me and almost immediately removed me from banned video over Shadowgate? Yet he hasn't removed underage boy predator Ollie Alexander from banned, nor has he said a word to disavow him." And if you look on banned video, you can see Ollie Alexander right there. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who want to hear what he has to say. Now that's interesting in itself. Now we add in Elon Musk and Elon Musk's relationship with Ollie Alexander. And that's where it gets interesting because it just says something about his access. So this is from Media Matters. Stop the Steal organizer says, Elon Musk told him he bought Twitter to save civilization. And Alexander said, a lot of people are going to talk back and say that they agree with you, not understanding what you're saying, but I've been saying this for years. He's going on to say, I'm fringe, not because I have to be, but that's how I got my start. And this is what I appreciate about Elon Musk. And Elon Musk and I had our first private conversation. And he said, I need to buy Twitter to save civilization. And, not only did he have a conversation with Musk and advise Musk on, again, recalibrating Twitter for the right, but apparently a lot of Ye's best music, a lot of his raps have been inspired by conversations with Ollie. who claims to be a time traveler. Like he might actually be Sammy Davis Jr. T-Dog says, I watched Shadowgate. She has a movie called Psyop, the Sea of Steel, which calls out Ollie. Fascinating. He's got pics of neighbor's ass in AJ's fridge. Right, 6 weeks into the lockdown, Alex Jones was like, I'm going to have to do something. I'm looking at my neighbors and I'm going to skin them up, butcher them, and feed them to my daughters. And he was talking about how he's not even going to tell his daughters that they're eating his neighbors. And he's like, he literally said, I'm going to eat my neighbor's ass. And he said that the liberal ones are going first, and he's going to eat them like corn on the cob. But we had posited that, well, first of all, it makes very little sense that he would need to resort to eating his neighbors 6 weeks into a pandemic when he's like the king of storable food items. Like, is he not buying his own storable food items? If anybody should have their bunker full, it's him. But then I thought, maybe he's going to offer this as some kind of a flavor, like InfoWars beef jerky. All right, but maybe Ollie Alexander's been to Alex's house and he's seen the human meat in the fridge, and he's holding that over him because it's all blackmail. Apparently, he's got something on Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's one of two things. Either he has evidence that Marjorie Taylor Greene is the one who put the pipe bomb out on January 6th or the night before, or he has evidence that Marjorie Taylor Greene with wraparound shades is literally Dog the Bounty Hunter. But whatever he has on her, apparently it's threatening her position, and she might actually be expelled if it gets out. We shall see. Your mama says, wasn't he involved in some sleazy affair with, if you're talking about Alex Jones, yeah, it wasn't his fault. I think he said something about, I don't know, maybe his iPhone was hacked. Oswaldo says, what a crowd. These are Marcus Goldfinch's buddies. Wonder what they got on the Red Ranger. Right. Well, I would agree with that. What I'm pointing out here is that QAnon, the person at the middle of the Q psyop, the one with the drops, the one that led everyone up to the insurrection, thinking this was the storm. We know who it is, or we know a major player in it, and that would be George News, who took over the Q drops when Q went silent on November the 5th, 2020. We know this. Now, when you look at the Stop the Steal organizers, the Friends of Stone, Alex Jones, who knows Q, has already admitted it, it's not hard to connect the dots here. And Ollie Alexander, Roger Stone, Alex Jones, George News, they're all together. George News is the White House operative. And again, we know this because before he got involved with Trump's campaign, he was involved very prominently in YouTube Flat Earth. That's where he was at, YouTube Flat Earth. And then somehow he got contracted to work with the government. That's what it looks like to me. But back when he was just MGTV, he ran afoul of the Infinite Plane Society and we doxed him. And then he escaped us after he tried to shut us down. And then I realized about a year later, I'm like, you know what? I got some leverage on this guy. Not only is he a hacker and but he's also working for Donald Trump. This is a potential scandal. So I haven't let it go. And I've continued to make moves with lawfare and everything else. Okay, let us continue. We're talking about right-wingers like Alex Jones not calling out Ollie. Speaking of, who's not calling out Ollie is Alex Stein. Not that I expect him to. Kind of like how people expect Joe Rogan to be a truther. Alex Stein was never that. He's always been reality TV shows. So just let him be Stein. Don't expect anything from him. However, I've been observing his show on Blaze TV, and I'm sure it's a niche. It reaches a certain demographic. I think that it's going to be around forever. I never thought he was going to have any sort of fall from grace. This guy has had what they call a meteoric rise, which doesn't make sense because they only fall down. You never see them flying up, and that's because the Earth's flat. But it's like, no, I call him Alex Stein because he's never going to go away. He fulfills the place where I guess previously it would have been Steven Crowder back when he was funny, before he became a prima donna, a diva, turning his nose up at a $10 million contract. I mean, that's insane that they're even worth that much money. But anyway, I've been watching his program. I'm talking about Alex Stein, and he's got this shtick where his wife and him share a boyfriend in common named Darius. And lately he's been doing the drag thing a lot. So Alex Stein dresses up as a woman, and he basically parodies a lot of these influencers who have just cropped up to flaunt their transitioning, like the one on the beer can. Well, my point is, I'm watching the latest Stein videos, and he's always in drag, and now he's making really crazily sick jokes, like adult humor. I don't even want to read some of the stuff he's talking about, but he's got this one here where he's in a dress with makeup on and his hair all done up, and he's got really good makeup. Like, he's obviously got the makeup department at Blaze TV. He's got Glenn Beck's people, and he's wearing a bikini and a tutu. And again, he's a protester of drag and groomers. Yet he's not calling out a groomer, but he's still doing drag on his own. But now in this episode, Darius admits that he has fantasies about Alex Stein. Not just fantasies, but they're talking explicitly about orifices and about ways that they do stuff. And really just, I would say it's a pornographic discussion. Like, you could not have children watching this episode of Alex Stein's program, where again, he's in drag and he's making a bunch of lewd jokes. Now I'm saying, isn't this just kind of like a drag show? My point being, Alex Stein's show has gone full circle, and it's just a drag show now. Amazing. And I've heard these cliches like far left and far right, eventually they meet. Well, we have seen it here, where he's gone all the way over to where now he's literally doing what he used to protest against. Okay, T-Dog135 says, David Knight always claims he got banned from band.video. Yes, I think anybody who crosses a certain line, I think David Knight got banned because he didn't jump on the Trump train. That got him banned. There was some kind of uniformity there that was required. And look, there's something else that came out about InfoWars, and this is why I think it's notable that Alex Jones hasn't said anything and Owen Schroyer hasn't said anything. Schroyer's a victim of assault. It's not a laughing matter, even though Sammy Davis or Scammy Davis Jr. said honk honk. It's not a joke. But why aren't they saying anything? Well, according to one of the victims who was in a communication with the ones exposing all this stuff, he was offered a job on InfoWars through Ali. Again, Ali Alexander is the Ghislaine Maxwell of the conservative and American right, white nationalists. And he said, yeah, you have to provide collateral. Like, what do you mean collateral? Collateral. Nude pictures. Nude pictures to be used as some kind of blackmail. Like, this is a blackmail club. And look, did Alex Jones sneak into the Bohemian Grove, or was he invited? Like, looking back at that, I think he was invited. And they're like, just pretend like you're sneaking in, and then you'll have credibility. It's the ultimate in deep fakery. That's a deep fake. That's someone going deep undercover, controlled opposition. And you can't get any more legit than the guy who actually infiltrated the bad guy's base during one of their rituals where they burned somebody in front of an owl than that. I'm starting to think, well, maybe he was invited. We says TMI IPS. Look, I'm holding back. I've actually left out a lot of stuff because it's just pretty heinous. But the point of it is, the Ollie Alexander character is a glimpse into all of their characters, all of them. Tina Marie says, LOL, it had 33 engines. Yes, Musk's launched 33. Now, note the connection here, because I heard it on the news today like 20 times, like 33 engines, 33 engines. And it launches on 4/20. Well, today is 4/20, 2023. This is the anniversary of the date that Derek Chauvin was convicted. 33 people were allowed in the courtroom. He's convicted on 4/20, and that was 330 days after George Floyd's death. You will find 42 and 33 correlated in many of these rituals for a lot of reasons. But we says, do you think people actually watch Stain, or is numbers a complete hoax? It's been revealed recently that Elijah Schaefer, or Elijah, as we used to call him, he was one of these crisis streamers during Kenosha during the summer of 2020. And we were pretty sure he was on meth because he was always like chewing. As we called him Elijah. But anyway, Elijah lost his job at Blaze. And they had this big Twitter account. They had the big platform set up, and Alex Stain just jumped right in. So the numbers are real. Whether they're bought or paid for, or what the quality of, I don't know. But he also has legitimately built up a buzz, even though he may have had assistance. The fact is, that brand of lowbrow shock value humor, it actually sells. To a lot of people, he's actually doing heroic things. But I think he kind of, like I said, he's just straight up a drag queen now. Alex Stein is a drag queen who does adult performances that just aren't really suitable for children. If Alex Stein was going to read books at a library, I would protest because I don't think that he's appropriate for children. But if he wants to go perform for adults, I support it. I would attend. Oswaldo says Stanley Kubrick's daughter and Kanye on Alex's show says it all. Right. His relationship with Kubrick's daughter is very interesting because Alex Jones is a huge part of the 9/11 psyop. And you have to get that clear. He wasn't surprised by it. Alex Jones was part of 9/11. He's the controlled opposition agent that gives you the false flag spin. That's his job. Alex Jones got his start with Waco. He helped rebuild the Branch Davidians compound. He's been part of this storm when it was just in their scripts. It's all connected. Waco, 1.6 million rounds caused the ATF to go over there. Alex Jones goes on Piers Morgan. He says, we might have to rise up because DHS bought 1.6 billion hollow point rounds. See, the 1.6 thing is a consistent theme here. It was all leading up to the 1.6. But yes, as far as these characters, what are their real numbers? Who knows? They all buy. They buy their audiences. I know that after we had, at one point, we had about 1,500 people live consistently. And after that, it became very hard to keep a channel. And I think it's because they realized how much damage one channel can do with those types of numbers. Okay, continuing. The Rust movie is resuming. The prosecutors are going to dismiss charges against Alec Baldwin, and they're going to delete the church scene. Now, the only reason why I analyze that particular event and situation so much is that that church is a symbol of the West. It's the same burning house that we saw on the Dawn Day 2 event. It's the same chapel from Westworld, which again, the West burning. It was a reoccurring theme last year, like the end of Game of Thrones, Westeros burning. The burning of the West has been a repeated theme, which we're going to be returning to. But I'm pointing it out that that house, that scene where the shooting happened, they removed that scene, but they're still going to produce the garbage movie, I'm sure. Commenter says, crisis media industrial complex scaring the masses is big business. Oh yeah, when I spell PSYOP, it's $P$Y SOP. Continuing, yes, TikTok's going to remove climate change denial videos and direct users to, quote, authoritative information. Like I said, they're going to take away your question marks. You can't even question it. You can't even question the premise. That's brainwashing. Unbelievable. But, the fact is you cannot graduate school without being a believer in it. And my problem with it is that you're not a knower. You're a believer. You've been given a replacement myth for the flood myth and the judgy flood god. It's all just mythology and superstition. But it is the state church. In other news, Donald Trump, the NFT salesman, is back on Instagram. I haven't checked yet, but his new NFTs, I think he made $4.6 million. All right, let's move on. So far, we've covered Ollie Alexander's relationship to Musk. We need to delve into that. Joe Rogan being called out by Thug Nasty. And I think Joe Rogan could actually take him out, like if they were to fight. I've seen Joe Rogan kick. But again, he's not the gatekeeper to flat Earth. I don't know why people think that he matters in this conversation. You know, I remember Eddie Bravo was offered the money by Alex Jones to go to the edge, and he said no. He said, no, you can't go. The Navy will shoot you. Like, they have these artificial boundaries they put up in people's heads that prevent them from taking the steps that they would need to find out if you can exit the Truman Show. I thought Eddie would be the one. Who's going to be the one to exit this Truman Show? Yes, Battery 79. Actually, it was like 3 years ago. It was 4 years ago. It was after Nipsey Hussle died. I would do is I would pick up on the latest story. Like, for example, this Ollie Alexander thing. We could have picked up a huge number if I had just put that in the headline when the story broke, just by following the Twitter feed. Like, I know how to market a live stream. And then when we had I think we had 1,500 when, let me think, there was a couple, it was last summer. There's a few times. It just depends on the event. But with trending events, you can kind of jump on. And we used to do this all the time. Whenever one of these psyops would happen, we'd look forward to it because a psyop meant traffic. Traffic meant a bigger pool of researchers, and even debate. Debate's useful. Disagreement's useful because it helps you firm up your argument so you know why you're saying, why you're asserting what you're asserting. I don't make any flippant assertions. All kinds of people defending their beliefs do. But I like to hear every possible type of refutation just so I can, practice. You get better with it. Because what we're looking at here is a system of lies, and the truthers are a counter narrative to the liars, the mainstream media narrative. So you got truthers and liars, but none of them are objectively closer to the truth because their world is purely subjective. A little side note here, I'm looking at CNN on the screen. Again, I keep an eye on the news. I watch the monolith with my right eye, and I keep my left eye here on the Discord server. And Uncle Festerman is back in the news, Senator Fetterman, and he went into depression because of being in the Senate. So he's kind of like this poster child for mental illness. And even before, I thought his character was kind of strange. Yeah, he does look like Uncle Fester by design. They do these things on purpose. I don't know what the joke is here, but it's there. And his wife did look kind of like Morticia Adams. Like there was something there to their story. But he came out with all these death dates tattooed on his body of people who had died while he was mayor, as though it was his fault they died. And I thought that's a very odd gesture, to personalize other people's deaths and to tattoo them on your body, which made me wonder, was he, I don't know, maybe these were sacrifices. Just speculating, just a little reckless speculation. Maybe Fetterman had to earn his way into the cult. Okay, we will continue here. Sledge says, open to all views, it'll happen. Yeah, look, we'll get the numbers again. It's just I have to be in an office space so that we can make use of it, because what we're doing here is we're expanding the pool of researchers, but we're also creating a breakaway. You have the mainstream media ecosystem that includes the gatekeepers. It includes the artificial boundaries. What we do is we examine the world of beliefs, we contrast it and test its claims against the real world, and then we acknowledge the existence and the effects of the capstone of the pyramid and how they operate through this live world order structure. And we have insider information. We have insight into how things work. And we don't dumb down our analysis for the multitudes who don't have a clue. Like, they're in the dark. They're profane. It's not our problem at this point, because there's enough people who can figure this out without assistance that I think we just need to basically on board a few thousand people into this off-world stage perspective, and we will have what I'm calling a parallel media. And by parallel media, I mean we're not like Alex Jones is counter to the mainstream. I'm not trying to counter the media. I'm not trying to stop them. I accept what they do. It's how they govern the multitudes. But what we are doing is essentially a philosophical movement. It's a break off based on philosophical differences. And we are, again, the only truly objective people out there. And our perspective isn't one of antagonism. In fact, if anything, we are inactivists. I liken our position to that of the captive audience in Mystery Science Theater 3000, where they're made to watch bad science fiction till they go crazy. Well, that's what the masses did. And when they bought the moon landing, they collectively went crazy. Now, the characters in Mystery Science Theater 3000 retain their sanity by throwing popcorn at the screen and laughing at the bad special effects, riffing off of the ridiculous storylines. And that's what we do. And that's how we've maintained this oasis of sanity. And we are essentially an alternative capstone. We have capstone level insights. We don't have it all yet, but we have quite a bit. We have enough to recognize the existence of the world stage as such. And we're not confused. In fact, I put a graphic up on my timosmond.blog. You can find it. I tweeted it out. It's got 3 eyes. One eye is closed, one eye is half open, and one is wide open. The eye that's closed says, news is real. The one that's half open says, the news is lying. That's a false flag. The eye that's wide open says, news is fake. That's a psyop. The difference is, one thinks everything on the screen is real. The second one thinks that there's more to the story. The third one says, the story's bullshit. And this is the thing. The ones who are paying attention, but who don't reject the claims of the media, by default add on to it. They go from being dreamers to experiencers of a nightmare. And they're wondering, why are you guys sleeping? Wake up, it's a nightmare. And that's been the only alternative to being a full-on dreamer, a sleeper, is to wake up, have the red pill, and then you see how bad everything is. And I'm saying, if you think everything's bad because it's worse than they say, then they caught you. They dragged you deeper into the matrix. Because the reality of it is, the truth of it is, that when you subtract the frightening possibilities and you subtract the unverifiables, the world is actually saner than they present it to be. The sky's not really falling. You don't need a helmet. Billiard says, any thought on Jimmy Carter? He's been in hospice for a while. I can't help but think they've got a date in mind to announce his passing. Interesting. Yeah, there's been a few theories about him. There's actually a theory that after JFK's fake assassination, he was repackaged as Jimmy Carter, which really would just take a different haircut, a little age, and I don't even think it took that much. If that's him, it's close. Never quite bought it though. I need to know. The timing of those noteworthy. No reason to assume he's still alive. Do you remember the Queen's death was like exactly 911 days after 3/11, the day of the coronavirus, the new crown. So new crown, 911 days later, the Queen dies. In other words, these essentially these modern royalty, their deaths are timed and coordinated. And if the person can't make it all the way, they're just going to deep fake it to get it to that finish line. But I don't think there's any reason to think that he's anything other than a prop at this time. Yes, Jimmy Carter, JC. Look, I was looking at like the very first psyop deconstructed at the level of even getting into the occult side was the JFK Kill King 33 ritual, where he's killed on the 33rd parallel. He's the king of Camelot. All sorts of symbolism attached to it. Even metascripting. It had the storyline from Wizard of Oz. Like the ruby slippers. Jack Ruby shoots Oz. There's all kinds of clues in this thing to how fake it all is. But I was thinking, they say that 3 bullets were fired. And 3 bullets would correspond to the 3 nails. Just more example of this Christification, which we saw with Trump. on full display. If you had any doubts about the metascript and the way that they build stories and narratives across all platforms, the way they're building this modern mythology as they write our history, as they fabricate our reality, just look at how Trump was totally Christified during Holy Week and how they correlated the timing of his arrest with Martin Luther King's assassination. And then they even joked about it on SNL, but it's all about getting the message out there. And they certainly have. I got a review on Apple Podcasts. And by the way, go to infiniteplane.live and scroll down and you can find all the different podcast options. And I'd recommend it anyway, because what I do is after these live streams, I take the recording that I get off my iPhone, and that's the one I upload. But once I'm in the office, we'll be back on video again. And we'll be doing phone calls. And we used to do these phone calls, some hours at a time. Live streams could carry on all night. And that's what we're going to be returning to. But I got a review I wanted to read. Quote, "The queen of nothing is real. This guy is the true definition of fake news." By the way, this is a 1-star. "Never documented facts on his radical theories. He and his cult believe everything is fake, everything is staged, and he expects people to support his radical atheism. Some people should study to be quiet, and he's one of them. This podcast is trash." Again, this was a review left a few weeks ago. I just noticed it. And I would say this. I don't believe everything's fake. The burden of proof is on the MSM to prove that it's real. If anything, you believe everything's real. The auto believer is the one making the philosophical error. The auto believer is the one with his head in the TV. You put your head through the screen. You've inverted your psychoepistemology, where now, even though you have your 5 senses and you have your mind to parse your senses, now you have an additional sensory apparatus, and it's called the screen. And your corporate controlled media, controlled by government ultimately, is the final arbiter on what you believe. But it says nothing about what you actually know, what you can independently, what you have verified, what you've learned for yourself. In other words, I don't believe everything's fake. I see the same world that you do, but I know what's fake versus what's real. I know the difference. And that's why I've been kicked out of their garden of ignorance. Oh, this one knows the difference between real and fake. He must have had one of those red pills, the forbidden fruit. Like the Garden of Eden, reminds me of the movie The Village, but it's the same basic idea here, that it's a realm of ignorance. And if you know how to discern for yourself, if you're like one of the gods, one of the capstoners, yeah, you can't really hang. You got to go. Going on, his cult believes everything's fake. No, there's no cult here. What we have aggregated is a group of off-world stage observers, some of the most informed and therefore insightful people on the plane. And we pool our information together because what we're examining is a puzzle with millions of pieces. And it's so vast that one person couldn't possibly see it all, much less figure out what it is. It requires many, many minds. And we have been building our body of research as a think tank for about 5 years now. Some people should study to be quiet. He's one of them. This podcast is trash. Well, thankfully for this person, there is so much content that it's easy for me to be lost in the mix. Like there's no reason to even censor or burn books. I don't even know why they bother. Okay, let us continue. Going through my notes. Yeah, Donald Trump back on Instagram sold his new NFTs where he's holding a Liberty Bell. Now, these are real ones. I think he actually paid an artist because his first batch of NFTs were actually ripoffs. He took images from a Walmart catalog and then posted his head on these different garments being modeled. Hilarious. I mean, really, he didn't even spend $5 on Fiverr. Just made nothing but pure profit. All right, continuing. Fox News cancels Dan Bongino and his, quote, canceled in the USA. Canceled in the USA, just got canceled. I've listened to Dan Bongino, and I think he had pretty big shoes to fill. He kind of filled in for Limbaugh, aka Jim Morrison, Mr. Mojo Rising, the Rush Bow. You know how long Rush Limbaugh was on air with the EIB? If you guessed 33 years, you're correct. He got out just in time. He got out just before the insurrection. That narrative had to be before it really blew up and became the new 9/11. And he was really the last voice of limited government conservatism in the world, as far as like on the air, that is. Gone. Old era. Now, like I said before, the conservatives are a bunch of liberals. It's liberal conservatives. Nicolas Cage promotes eating bugs as Hollywood ramps up the World Economic Forum 666 insect agenda. These celebrities do these things because people model themselves off of celebrities. You got to worry when they start cannibalizing people openly. Right now, it's just bugs. But it's always do as we say, not as we do. You know, clearly this is to demean. I think this is to demean us. But he's in a movie called The Humanity Bureau from 2017 that might be worth checking out. It's a movie where humanity is locked down because of fallout. But as he finds out, there isn't any fallout. It's all a trick, but you couldn't know because the tools that you would need to determine if there's actually any fallout are illegal for regular people. It's like contraband. So he finds out the truth that they're being locked down for a lie. That was 2017. An update on Andrew Lester, the 84-year-old who shot the kid who rang his doorbell. He shot Ralph Yarl. Apparently, according to his grandson, he was racist and he believed in far-right conspiracy theories about Dr. Fauci. Imagine that. This is how perfectly framed their stories are. Old, white, racist, conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, gun fetishist, racist, and shoots somebody who knocks on his door. They're trying to incite something, obviously. T-Dog says, glad the Apple guy jabbed at Tim because he answers so brilliantly. Thanks. You know what? I listen to my critics. And I do pay attention to people's refutations of my assertions. And I'm implacable. I'm not going to change my position without evidence. And I stand on that. But sometimes people do challenge me and I have to, like, I would be talking about, oh, look how fake the fake space station is. It's all CGI. And then somebody would call in, oh, I just saw it. It flew over my house. Chris Hadfield was up there with his guitar. He waved down at me. I'm like, okay, really? Call back in 90 minutes if it comes over your house again. And they would call back and they would say, yep, just came over again. And I thought, okay, now I'm in trouble because now it's me arguing against these callers and it's my word against theirs. And they're calling in as witnesses. Are they bearers of false witness? Are they liars? I can't really say it, can I? It gets to be tricky. And then I realized that they're kind of playing on this gray area where it might be a plane, might be a satellite, it might be the ISS. But I dug into it. And what I found is that according to the globe Earth model, the Earth has a shadow, aka nighttime. And the Earth's shadow extends into space 870,000 miles. Now, the ISS is in low Earth orbit. Only objects in low Earth orbit can be seen moving across the night sky. Anything higher would be geostationary. In other words, it has to be in low Earth orbit for you to see it moving, like at any appreciable rate. And the ISS flying over your house, yeah, okay. The problem with it is that for you to see it as a light in the sky, it would be in the Earth's shadow, meaning you can only see the thing after the sun sets and just before sunrise. There's a small window where it's even visible because after that, it is in the shadow of the Earth and it is not able to therefore reflect the sun's light. The person who said they saw it right over their head was fibbing. They were confabulating. They were lying. Probably a Fed because the thing would not be reflecting light. It's in the dark. So what did he see? Well, he didn't see a satellite because, again, same problem, shadow of the Earth. And as soon as I made it clear that there's a shadow of the Earth, or if it's a ball that would have a shadow, then all these calls that would reflexively try to contradict me stopped happening. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. They didn't know, but they were lying. That's my point. But we use various heuristics, like fake until proven real, the fake ability test, Occam's razor, Hitchens' razor. There are various things you can employ to keep everything on the side of reason. All right, let's continue here. The NYPD can now shoot GPS trackers at your car. Yeah, it's got something called the Star Chase Guardian HX. It's a pneumatic cannon. Basically, it's a gun that shoots tags on your car so they can track you down later. Good to know. We covered the Sweet 16 PSYOP. They actually arrested a third suspect, but they first promoted only two. And one was 17, one was 16, gave us the obligatory 33. Now there's a third one. Don't have a motive yet, but I think the subtext speaks for itself. We've been getting all these random attacks, wrong door, wrong driveway, wrong car, boom, boom, boom. They're telling us something here. And then Waco, you throw Waco in, and look, think about this, 16s everywhere, right? I keep talking about these 16s, Sweet 16 on 416. Then you had the parking garage in New York collapsed, and it was like 1 killed, 6 injured. I keep seeing these 16s, and I've been making note of them as they're piling up. The 1.6 billion that Fox was sued for, the 1.6 billion rounds, the 1.6 million Waco rounds, January 6th. I'm like, where is this leading? And I think it's leading to this. Waco, which was 419, and again, this code, 9/11, 119, 6/11, which was McVeigh's death date, or 116, they're practically interchangeable. 3/11, 11/3. I mean, they're so interchangeable that we were examining predictive programming, and we had predicted that 3/11 would be the kickoff for World War III, and we were accurate. There's what we're doing is just, I guess it's based on observation, observed patterns. And this Waco thing was all about the guns. The ATF going in for the guns. Alex Jones had his start with Waco. Alex Jones was there at 1/6. He's actually hanging on to the guns of the 1/6 rioters. So where am I going with this? Well, the recent spate of gun violence, these random attacks, new types of attacks. Now there's left-wing shooters, like the Reddit shooter, like the transitioning shooter at the Nashville church. You have all these non-binary shooters because the right wing didn't care about MAGA hat wearing, bowl cut shooters with AR-15s. They didn't care. Now they care. It's all they talk about. Oh, we're going to get shot by a trans gun person. They don't exist. They manufacture these bad guys. They make them up out of these essentially stories. But my point is, they've inflated the risk of gun violence. Now it's anybody will shoot you. You'll get shot from this side of the fence. You get shot from that side of the fence. And I think it's because they're going to make a move. This 1/9, this COVID-19, 19 years before that, 19 hijackers, Pearl Harbor event, Operation AI with the 19. We keep seeing that 19. And it has to do with major psychological operations that take place over a period of time, a cycle, a revolution. And I think right now they're going to make a move on guns. That's just what I'm saying. Sledge says, are we expecting more shootings? Well, look, in the last few days, like I said, there's one in Farmington. The police shoot the wrong guy. Then the next day, this kid rings doorbell, gets shot. Then you have the girl rolls a basketball to the wrong neighbor's house, and he shoots her dad and her. Then you have the cheerleaders get in the car. They get shot. You have that woman and her friend park in the wrong driveway. Her friend gets killed. So we have half a dozen wrong door, wrong driveway shootings. This wasn't a thing, and now suddenly it's a thing. And then the Waco documentary called Waco American Apocalypse just dropped on Netflix on the day that Trump kicked off his campaign for 2024. 3/22, this documentary comes out. A couple days later, there's Trump. Oswaldo said they just had an ATF pistol brace hearing in Congress committee yesterday. Yes, yes, there's definitely something going on here with the guns. And to me, this is the thing. Look how they're going after abortion, how they're trying to restrict abortion pills. Well, this is incensed the left, as most of the procedures are done with pills. And the Supreme Court stalled the bans. But my point is, just as they're antagonizing the left with womb control, again, left, female, womb, they're attacking the right commensurately. Gun, phallic symbol, male, gun control, female, womb control, wombs versus guns, left versus right. It's all just psyop. And I'm expecting that they're just going to increase the intensity of the conversation. So anyone who's not for gun control is just going to look and sound crazy. Like, are you sure you want to live in the world where you go in the wrong neighborhood and you get blasted? And they can create these perceptions. Like, there are people like Luke Rudowski, one of these fake truthers. They're like, oh, there's going to be a disaster in Chicago. They just looted the Walmart. It's empty and people are going to starve. And then Elon Musk retweets it. He's like, wow, it looks like Fallout. Like, his association for the devastation he sees in reality is a video game. What does that say about Musk? His frame of reference is a video game. But what Luke and Elon failed to note is that the footage was 3 years old. They're overreacting to something 3 years old and drawing erroneous conclusions from it and building up this echo chamber of Chicago has fallen. And then they add on to it the real stuff, like a bunch of teenagers get rowdy and they jump on some cars. And they are just teenagers. There's this tendency to say, oh no, they're all violent thugs, or they're a dangerous mob. Well, yeah, I guess it's unruly, but when you add that with a lot of this hyped up stuff on Twitter, it creates a misperception that the media wants us to have. Not that I'm moving there. Like, I'm not exactly interested in mobs jumping on cars, but I mean, as 2020 showed us, a lot of this stuff is instigated anyway. It's hard to think it's organic. In fact, they pay most of these individuals. A riot once. It was after Trump came down here on his first campaign, and afterward, there was a big riot out in front. And what I learned later was most of them were Hillary Clinton operatives, but they were wearing Bernie Sanders shirts. It's like there's just competition on either side. You know, like they're not really unified. Like, people will think that, you know, when I say it's monolithic, it's too simplistic. No, it's monolithic. It's absolutely a monolithic control over everything in terms of government and media. The space program proves it, but it doesn't mean that they're all friends on the way up. It's a big dysfunctional, shallow gene pool, and they don't have to get along. In fact, they play these dynamics are part of, I think, the narcissistic culture that they create that the masses can imitate. Joined by Truman B3000 says, IPS live on my birthday, #blessed. Well, happy birthday, happy 420. Elon Musk's fireworks show, the billionaire BLIMP Club, blew up a blimp and got accolades for it. Oh, you're so much closer to taking us to Mars. I'm like, I don't know. Why don't we just get somebody with a lower budget to repeat what they did with Apollo 11? Oh, look, okay, I'm looking at the news. Doorbell shooter's grandson says, quote, of his grandfather, he'd watch Fox News all day. Live on CNN, doorbell shooter, my grandfather watched Fox News all day. Okay, that's a causal factor. He watched Fox News, therefore. Fascinating. But I knew this was going to happen. I actually called this out a couple days ago. I said, watch, they're going to say that this old man was radicalized by a Twitter feed of people like Stu Peters inflating the idea that there's a race war. And that's what they've been doing. They've been taking footage from 2020. I mean, it's bad. Violence is bad, but they're taking old bits of footage and then replaying it and then taking it out of context. And the comments speak volumes. You know, people see this and they react in a very visceral way. I mean, it's truly agitprop. Stu Peters is an agit propagandist. He's a fear pornographer. And that's his gig. In fact, there's another Died Suddenly installment coming out soon. And all of the funeral directors and embalmers that they reference are liars or they're actors. All dead bodies have clots because their blood stops flowing when they die. And by the time they get to the funeral home, they've been laying around for a few days. Even in refrigeration, the blood coagulates. When you embalm somebody with a single point injection, assuming they haven't been autopsied, you have to have forceps in the jugular that practically reach down into the heart so you can pull out the chunks, the clots, to maintain the flow. Because if there's any kinds of clotting, you might get swelling and you can't reverse it. Like I've embalmed hundreds of people, and taking clots out is a huge part of it. And you massage them out. I mean, it's like standard operating procedure. And I remember sometimes we pull out these really large celery-like stalks, and it's like that didn't have anything to do with the person dying at all. It doesn't. But the thing is, Stu Peters puts out this documentary, and he's like, bodies have clots, therefore the vax did it. No, that's not true at all. But they don't care about facts. It's the Fear of the Month Club, the current thingers on the right. All right, let's see here. Dominion versus Fox. That 1.6, again, 1.6, the $1 billion trial. I think they settled for $787 million. And they don't have to apologize. But Smartmatic is going after them next, so Fox is not out of the woods. Continuing, going through my notes. U.S. cyber chiefs warn of threats from China and AI. Again, AI, they're introducing it with a lot of fear and trepidation, but they're going to create a god. I think Elon Musk has already hinted at this. They're going to find a god proxy. They're going to find a mind that isn't influenced by money or greed or desire for anything that human beings would want. And it's going to be a secular god. And look, if you don't think they can do it, they've given atheists a concept of sin. They effected a puritanical revolution. They revised these atheistic types into now they believe in sin and social distancing against the non-believers, and they even have their own flood god. Oh, we better do better and not make God mad because he'll flood us. Only they call it globe. They believe in sin, but they call it virus or carbon footprints. What they have done is they have created a secular counterpart to the old religion. But the only thing they're missing is God. They have the Bible. That's your monolith. That's the big screen. It just has to be censored. They have to burn all the competing non-canonical texts, the heresy, what we have. But that's your Bible. The MSM is the de facto world state church. But they're going to bring in the God here soon. In fact, in 1969, you had that Bowie song, Save Your Machine, where he actually says in the lyrics that President Joe gave control to the Savior machine. Here's the lyrics. President Joe once had a dream. The world held his plan, so they gave their pledge, and he told them his scheme for a Savior machine. They called it prayer. Its answer was law. Its logic stopped war, gave them food. How they adored it till they cried in its boredom. Anyway, this President Joe Savior machine has everything to do with David Bowman, The Space Odyssey of Kubrick, David Bowie's character, and the parallel of his music with the space age as we moved into it, and the merging of the monolith, Hell 9000, with the AI. It's all coming together. Big convergence here. Rocco says they're going to invent a godhood, call it AI, and sell you slavery. And AI is another 19. AI 19. It's amazing the consistency. That's why I point out these numbers. Like yesterday, I was like, look, Timothy McVeigh dies at 33 on 6/11. 90 days later, 33-year-old Mohammed Atta dies as the lead hijacker on 9/11. These 33-year-old martyrs, David Koresh, the QAnon shaman, even in his heyday when he got started with this cult, Charlie Manson was 33. Like there's a pattern that we've discerned, and it's so intricate, but it does take a metascript view. You have to recognize all the different platforms that are conveying it. Commenter says, ready or not, it'll take you down. Moby Dick will subsume all who go alone. It does not care. Those who go along to get along. Yeah, most will lie along to get along, but most don't know they're lying. That's how good the system is. That's how immersive it is. The media didn't just take over one day and become dishonest. No, it was instituted as basically a quarantine against pure truth. It was always a closed system. Like imagine if you were born in Disneyland and nobody told you. And you're raised with Donald Duck and Mickey, and no one actually knows the world outside of Disneyland. Your entire culture comes from Disney. You have a closed system, and nobody interacts with any sort of hint of what's outside. That's like the Truman Show or like the movie The Village. We're talking about enclosed systems, a total environment. And we are in one. We were born into one. The internet has opened up. There's been a few cracks here and there because of the way that we have been real time deconstructing fake news, which wasn't possible before. You didn't have the hive mind. Like we're a bunch of termites eating away at the edifice of their big lie structure, their pyramid of lies. We didn't have the ability to communicate and compare notes until very recently, much less real time. All right. Well, I'm going to be sending out notifications. Go to patreon.com/Infinite Plane Society. If you haven't signed up, you'll get live stream notifications. You'll be in the know about literally everything. And you'll be getting the notifications whenever we get live streams, replays, and interviews. And of course, anything else that we're doing. But if you want to stay in the know, patreon.com/Infinite Plane Society, or go to infiniteplane.live and subscribe to any of the podcast feeds. We say thanks to everyone. Appreciate everyone's support, comments, and insights. Special thanks to Frank, to Barry. Again, those of you who kept the tank rolling despite the interruptions we've had here and there. But overall, I see it long term. We're definitely ahead. We're coming out on top. I'm reopening my eBay store, which will guarantee that we'll be in an office space here within about 30 days, which means we'll be back to live streams with open phones, which is usually the best. So thanks again for joining. This has been Musk Blows Up a Blimp for 420, Infinite Plane Radio 420, 2023.